Chapter 21 Heart to Heart. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 21 Heart to Heart. Dai Yao was betting everything, banking on a few key things. First, his reflexes were fast. He figured if he saw Zhu Zhuqing reach for a knife, he could use his explosive speed to get out of striking range. Second, even if he was slow on the draw, he had Chaos Qingnian as a last resort. As long as he wasn't too badly hurt, he could survive. Most importantly, he hoped Zhu Zhuqing had come back to explain why she tried to kill him, meaning she might have changed her mind. Zhu Zhuqing walked toward him slowly, eventually stopping right beside him. Dai Yao's heart pounded. She was close enough that he couldn't react in time. She was getting closer and closer. If she stabbed him now, Chaos Qingnian might not be enough, but trusting his instincts, he gritted his teeth, squeezed his eyes shut, and waited. Time crawled by, but he didn't feel any pain, just a slight chill. Dai Yao opened his eyes. Zhu Zhuqing was buttoning up his open clothes with her cold hands. Moonlight streamed through the window, illuminating the side of her face. Her long eyelashes cast a soft shadow. Dai Yao couldn't help but smile. He knew she had made her choice. He admitted his methods were a little underhanded. He'd made sure he was prepared, and then given Zhu Zhuqing two options. Either way, he wouldn't lose, but if she picked the second option, he'd win her heart. From now on, he'd have a girl by his side, through thick and thin, forever. After ending up in Douluo continent and getting pushed around, Dai Yao vowed he'd never be a nice guy again. He'd do whatever it took to get what he wanted, lying to a girl to win her over. No big deal. He took Zhu Zhuqing's hand, led her outside, jumped onto the roof, and sat down. The sky was clear, with a full moon shining brightly. A light breeze was blowing, making it a bit chilly, but nothing a soul master couldn't handle. Dai Yao brushed the snow off the roof's ridge, found a clean cloth to cushion it, and then asked Zhu Zhuqing to sit. He told her, "The queen isn't going to give you freedom at all." "Why not?" Zhu Zhuqing seemed surprised. "Because I'm the fourth prince. Killing the first prince has huge consequences, so the queen is wary of attacking me directly. But you're different. You just got engaged to me. In name, you're my princess. If you kill me, she can call it a marital dispute." Dai Yao sneered. "She can say you resisted the engagement, and she gets off scot-free. And you're the one who takes the fall for killing the crown prince. Killing a crown prince is a capital crime. What choice do you have but to pay with your life?" Zhu Zhuqing's mouth hung open, her eyes wide. She realized for the first time how much the queen expected of her. She was only 6 years old. Sure, she was mature for her age, but she was still too young to deal with someone like the queen. Actually, Dai Yao was making all this up, trying to make the queen look bad, drive a wedge between Zhu Zhuqing and the queen, and get Zhu Zhuqing on his side. "Aunt Queen wants to use me?" "Absolutely," Dai Yao said, ecstatic. He knew Zhu Zhuqing was starting to believe him. But he kept a serious face, acting like he felt her pain, and continued to badmouth the queen. "You're just a tool for her. Once she's done with you, she'll get rid of you." Zhu Zhuqing was scared. "Thanks to you," she said, "or I would have been tricked by the queen." She looked at Dai Yao, embarrassed, and said shyly, "I'm sorry I tried to kill you." Dai Yao stood up, acting righteous. "Hey, what are you talking about? You were in the dark. It wasn't your fault." Zhu Zhuqing looked at Dai Yao's fake act under the moonlight, burst out laughing, and quickly covered her mouth. Dai Yao chuckled and said, "We have a marriage contract. Even real couples fight, let alone two people who just met. Let me introduce myself. My name is Dai Yao. I'm 6 years old. Zhu Zhuqing, also 6. Then you can call me brother. That there's nothing like having a girl call you brother." Besides, he was already in his 20s in his previous life. It felt weird to call a 6-year-old girl sister. "Why should I call you brother? We're the same age." Zhu Zhuqing didn't seem thrilled about it. "Because I'm older," Dai Yao said, making things up again. "My birthday's actually earlier than what's on the record. So, technically, I'm older." "Really?" Zhu Zhuqing didn't look convinced. It's settled. You'll call me brother from now on, and I'll call you sister or Zhu Zhuqing. Okay, Zhu Zhuqing said, a small smile playing on her lips. A gust of wind blew, carrying some snow. The cold air stung their lungs, but neither of them felt the cold. Dai Yao's eyes softened as he gently brushed a stray hair from Zhu Zhuqing's face. Thinking of his past, he said to Zhu Zhuqing with emotion, I'm not as handsome as Dai Mubai, and I can't give you the easy life. My personality's a little rough around the edges. But then he said, with absolute certainty, I'll do everything I can to be there for you. If you're in danger, I'll stand in front of you. If anyone wants to hurt you, they'll have to go through me first. Zhu Zhuqing stared at him, her heart racing. In the original story, her cold personality came not only from Dai Mubai's abandonment in the brutal battle for the throne, but also from her upbringing. If the Dai family had no family ties, did the Zhu family? The Zhu family was just as full of schemes. She'd never felt any family affection. Her sisters had always bullied her. Her mother only cared about Zhu Zhuqing, the eldest prince's wife, the sister with the best chance of becoming queen. Growing up in that environment, Zhu Zhuqing had to hide behind a cold mask, looking at Dai Yao, making such a solemn promise under the moonlight. Zhu Zhuqing burst into tears. What's wrong? Dai Yao asked, worried he'd done something wrong. It's nothing, Zhu Zhuqing said, smiling through her tears. She didn't feel cold at all, and she promised herself, I won't let you down either. Chapter 22 Star Luo Royal Academy. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 22 Star Luo Royal Academy. Under the moonlight, two figures drew closer. Zhu Zhuqing leaned her head gently on Dai Yao's shoulder. The moon was beautiful, the breeze soft. Close to her pretty face, inhaling the delicate scent of her hair, Dai Yao felt a profound sense of peace. He wished the moment could last forever. Time flew, and the night deepened. They descended from the roof and returned inside. Dai Yao faced Zhu Zhuqing. The fight for the throne is a bloodbath. Losers don't get a second chance. We're young, and yeah, Davis and Dai Yaming have us beat when it comes to spirit power right now. But if we keep at it, work our tails off, we have a shot. Hearing this, Zhu Zhuqing's uncertain expression hardened with resolve. You're right, she whispered. They sat down, crossing their legs, and began to cultivate. After a while, Zhu Zhuqing opened her eyes, her usually cold face showing surprise. What, how is my training going so much faster? It wasn't like this at home. Is it because of Dai Yao? She glanced at him, a hint of doubt in her eyes. Pushing her questions aside, she resumed practicing. Days passed. Dai Yao and Zhu Zhuqing used their time like gold. Except for eating and sleeping, they trained relentlessly, day and night. They did sleep in separate rooms. Of course, their spirit power steadily grew. Zhu Zhuqing's was almost at level 10, she'd be ready for her first spirit ring soon. Training next to Dai Yao made her cultivation speed skyrocket, shrinking what used to take over a month into a few weeks. After each session, Zhu Zhuqing would look at Dai Yao, bewildered. What was it about him that boosted her training like this? She kept the secret to herself, naturally. Faster training was crucial. It seriously upped their odds in the throne challenge, so no way was she blabbing. Dai Yao had his own concerns. The spirit power in his dantian was being condensed into a liquid state by Qinglian, which meant he needed a lot more spirit power than others at the same level. Luckily, Qinglian also sped up his training, or he'd be pulling his hair out. His spirit power was creeping toward level 12. Finally, a knock came at the cold palace doors. A palace maid presented 2 silk letters to Dai Yao. Unfurling his, he saw an invitation to attend Xingluo Royal Academy. It showed soaring mountains and an ancient castle perched high on a slope. The castle walls were weathered and worn, radiating centuries of history. After dismissing the maid, he woke Zhu Zhuqing, who was still cultivating, and handed her her invitation. Get ready. We're going to Xingluo Royal Academy. Zhu Zhuqing smiled and nodded. The next day, dusk was falling. The carriage lurched to a stop. The guard turned. Your Highness, we've arrived at the academy. Dai Yao stepped out. Xingluo Royal Academy was nearly 60 miles from the palace. A school's quality depended on its faculty, sure, but also on its ability to mimic optimal training environments. Mimicry meant recreating conditions best suited for cultivating specific fighting styles. A fire phoenix, for example, thrived near a volcano. A fish spirit, rivers, lakes, and oceans, more simulated environments meant more space. That's why the Royal Academy was built so far from the city. It's beautiful, Zhu Zhuqing breathed, poking her head out. The setting sun painted the mountains with an orange-gold glow. The still lake, the distant peaks, the ancient castle, all made it feel like paradise. Dai Yao felt a surge of excitement at the thought of studying here. Following the guide, they came to a cluster of buildings. This is where spirit masters study, the guide explained. It's split into teaching areas and dorms. For practice, you can pick any spot out there among the mountains and lakes. Dai Yao was daydreaming about the future when a cold voice broke in. You the fourth prince? That the guy had a long, narrow face, big eyes, small mouth, like a rat. Dai Yao kept his cool. Who's asking? Humph. The man snorted, spirit power surged around him, and he radiated power. After being possessed by the martial spirit, the whole person looked like a big mouse, with 2 yellow spirit rings covering his body. A level 2 spirit master. Dai Yao felt a jolt of alarm. Intense pressure hit him, suppressing his own spirit power. This is a great spirit master. Just from the martial spirit pressure, he knew he couldn't win this. A high-pitched squeal pierced the air. The great spirit master's first spirit ring lit up, and he burrowed underground, hunting for Dai Yao. Dai Yao felt a chilling presence moving below, the occasional pulse of killing intent making him sweat. What do I do? He cast about for an answer, but found none. He glanced back. Zhu Zhuqing watched him, worried. His panic vanished. Even if he was going to lose, he'd go down fighting. He stepped in front of Zhu Zhuqing to protect her, gritted his teeth, and channeled the spirit power in his dantian. He was about to activate his martial spirit when a hand stopped him. I got this. The voice was strong and confident. Dai Yao looked back. The guy was fat, with a face like a cattail leaf fan. You overgrown rat, the fat man said, his voice mocking. Come on, let's dance. His size ballooned, his nose stretched out, he looked like a mammoth, and 2 yellow spirit rings appeared. Second spirit skill, War Stomp. The fat man slammed his foot down. The ground shook, and dust erupted in a brown-gray ring. The ground buckled, and the mouse man shot out of the hole, spitting blood. He looked like hell. He glared at Dai Yao's rescuer. You fat oaf. You really want to interfere with what the first prince wants? You asking for trouble? The fat man chuckled. If the first prince himself was here, I'd stay out of it, maybe even give the fourth prince a kick or 2 myself. His face darkened. But the first prince isn't here. It's just you. If you're scared of getting your butt kicked, scram. The mouse man's lips trembled. He stared at the fat man, memorizing his face. Finally, he turned to Dai Yao, voice tight with rage. Kid, I'll give you this one. The first prince wanted me to tell you, enjoy your time at the academy. Please vote for recommendations. Please continue to read. Thank you. Chun Fong here. Chapter 23 2 Princes. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 23 The Second Prince. Dai Yao's heart sank. The relief he'd felt after winning the duel vanished instantly. If others hadn't stepped in, he wouldn't have escaped, and Zhu Zhuqing would have paid the price. He'd barely set foot in the academy before that punk mouse, one of the first prince's goons, started hassling him. His reputation was sure to take a hit, and he'd become the laughingstock. Dai Yao felt like a massive weight was crushing his chest, making it hard to breathe. A fierce desire for power surged within him. Power. It all comes down to strength. If I were strong enough, that rat wouldn't dare mess with me. He resolved to seize every opportunity to get stronger, so he could protect himself and Zhuqing. He tamped down his emotions and said gratefully to the hefty guy who'd helped him, thanks for the assist, man. What's your name? Hey, no problem. Just call me Fatty. I've wanted to punch that rat's lights out for ages, but I never had a good excuse. Today was my lucky day, Fatty chuckled. Then, he held out a hand in invitation and said, someone knew that rat would come after you and specifically asked me to watch your back. Who's looking out for me? Dai Yao was confused. Besides his third uncle, Dai Hengyu, he didn't know anyone at Xingluo Royal Academy. Who would help him? It's the second prince. The second prince specifically asked me to bring you to him, Fatty added cheerfully, though there was a hint of reluctance in his tone. The second prince, Dai Yaming, he and I are in a competition. What could he possibly want? Dai Yao pondered for a moment but couldn't figure out the second prince's motives. This was an academy, so Dai Yao wasn't worried about Dai Yaming trying anything. Taking Zhu Zhuqing with him, the two followed Fatty for several miles into a large mountain. They continued along the winding mountain path, and finally, after the last bend, the view opened up dramatically. A huge lake stretched out before them. Beside the lake stood an exquisite castle, with ornate structures and cascading waterfalls. It was a breathtaking scene at every turn, a truly special place. After checking in with the guards outside, they navigated a maze of corridors and finally spotted a figure in a lakeside pavilion. A breeze swept across the lake, fluttering his clothes, and the blonde hair on his back shone like the sun. He turned, set down a teacup, and smiled faintly, his eyes so deep that it was impossible to read his thoughts. He radiated an aura of intelligence and control. The moment Dai Yao saw him, he knew this was no ordinary man. Fourth brother, Dai Yaming said with a chuckle. Hearing such a friendly address from a member of the Dai family still felt a little strange, so Dai Yao replied, second brother. Thanks for your help, second brother. I wouldn't have been able to handle that situation without you, Dai Yao said gratefully, bowing slightly. Although they were rivals, he felt he needed to show his appreciation for the help he had received. Don't mention it. The first prince is our common enemy. I couldn't just stand by while he bullied you, Dai Yaming said, neatly aligning himself with Dai Yao. I heard about the duel. I didn't expect you to defeat Dai Mubai. It's true, the younger generation is always pushing forward, Dai Yaming said, looking at Dai Yao with admiration. He wanted to emulate Dai Yao and defeat Davis. It's really ridiculous. After a brief exchange, Dai Yao asked Dai Yaming the reason for the invitation. Second brother, what brings me here today? Dai Yaming laughed, turned, and gazed at the sparkling lake, presenting his back to Dai Yao. I invited you here to form an alliance and take down the first prince together. Before the duel, Davis and Dai Mubai, both sons of the queen, had joined forces and overwhelmed him. Now that Dai Mubai was defeated, he was the laughingstock of Xingluo Royal Academy. He wasn't interested in fighting with him any longer. Now, he only had to deal with Davis, but Davis was still a powerful soul master and the likeliest heir to the throne. He was surrounded by talented nobles and commoners. Dai Yaming only had Fatty, so the power gap between them was huge. He desperately needed an ally. Dai Yao already had a blood feud with the first prince and had proven his strength by defeating Dai Mubai. He was the perfect choice, but he was also a little worried. After all, Dai Yao's talent could threaten his position, but it was unlikely. There was a 6-year age gap between them. He was already a level 25 soul master. There was no way someone who had just obtained a soul ring could pose a threat. What do you think? Dai Yaming asked with a smile. He and Davis had similar soul power levels, but time was his biggest constraint. He needed time to train, but Davis would not allow him that luxury. If Dai Yao could distract Davis, he could focus on training and catch up. Dai Yao was thinking along the same lines. Before arriving at Xingluo Royal Academy, his third uncle had analyzed the situation and warned that Davis would harass and suppress him, making it difficult to train. With Dai Yaming drawing Davis's attention, he could focus on improving his strength. I'm all for forming an alliance with you, second brother. The two chatted, and the atmosphere in the pavilion became relaxed and amicable. Suddenly, a discordant voice broke the peace. Well now, where did you come from, looking so poor? Are you here begging for scraps? That the voice was lazy and soft, yet laced with an alluring charm that sent a shiver down your spine. Dai Yao turned and saw a woman leaning against the wall. She wore a tight-fitting black outfit that accentuated her curves. She covered her mouth with a folding fan and smiled gently. Seeing this woman, Zhu Zhuqing trembled slightly, her eyes wide with fear. She grabbed Dai Yao's arm and hid behind him. "If you hide like that, I'll gobble you up." The woman sauntered over to Dai Yao, lowered her fan, and gave Zhu Zhuqing a wicked smile. "Sister." "Sister," Zhu Zhuqing stammered. It was Dai Yaming's fiancée, the second young lady of the Zhu family, Zhu Zhuqing. Zhu Zhuqing had been bullied by her older sister since she was a child. Zhu Zhuqing was all smiles but had a knife behind her back. Zhu Zhuqing was wild and willful, acting without restraint. Their bullying of Zhu Zhuqing only worsened after Zhu Zhuqing's martial spirit awakened. Chapter 24 Debasement. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 24, Rock Bottom. "Who's this?" Dai Yao asked. "Zhu Zhuqing, my fiancée," Dai Yaming said, draping an arm possessively around her waist. Zhu Zhuqing gave a short, dismissive laugh, sizing Dai Yao up. "He's supposed to be royalty, but why does he reek of poverty and bitterness?" Dai Yao's martial spirit had just awakened. He'd been stuck in the cold palace until he was 6 and was just a regular guy in his past life. Of course, he wasn't going to act like some blue-blooded aristocrat. Still, he wasn't that bad. The comment rubbed Dai Yao the wrong way. He couldn't tell if she was just blunt or genuinely looked down on him. He plastered on a smile and said to Dai Yaming, "Second brother, you're a lucky man to have such a beautiful wife." Dai Yao wanted to get on Zhu Zhuqing's good side, hoping to avoid any more snide remarks. They were trying to team up with Dai Yaming, and Zhu Zhuqing was Zhu Zhuqing's sister. It wasn't worth ruining a potential alliance over a few insults. "Like your opinion matters." Zhu Zhuqing's pretty face was twisted with contempt. She looked down at Dai Yao and Zhu Zhuqing, then waved her hand in disgust, like she was swatting away a bad smell. "A loser is a loser. He just stands there and takes it. What a coward." "Honey," she said to Zhu Zhuqing, "your fiancé is a real catch. There are plenty of fish in the sea, you know. Don't worry, I'll set you up with someone way better. Your cuckolded fiancé won't mind." Dai Yao stared at Zhu Zhuqing, stunned by her viciousness. He clenched his fists, his face darkening as he turned to Dai Yaming. "Does the second prince have anything to say about this?" he asked, his voice tight. He'd dropped the second brother act, calling him second prince now. He was furious. Zhu Zhuqing's words weren't just insulting him, they were insulting Zhu Zhuqing. But Zhu Zhuqing was Dai Yaming's fiancée, so he couldn't just rip into her. "Fourth brother, it's just a joke. Lighten up," Dai Yaming said with a chuckle, completely unbothered. Zhu Zhuqing trembled slightly behind him, as if she had heard something terrifying. Dai Yao gave her hand a reassuring squeeze, his expression hardening. He glared at Zhu Zhuqing, then fixed his gaze on Dai Yaming. "So, insulting allies and launching personal attacks is the second prince's idea of forming an alliance." Zhu Zhuqing leaned against Dai Yaming, mocking him openly. "You, an 11th level soul master, want to form an alliance with Yaming? You're delusional." Dai Yaming smiled smoothly. "My fiancé has a bit of a wild streak. Don't take it to heart." "But is that a no on the alliance?" The heavy-set man next to him chimed in, warning Dai Yao, "His Highness is doing you a favor by offering an alliance. Don't bite the hand that feeds you." Seeing the second prince's aggressive attitude, Dai Yao's anger flared. They clearly looked down on him, with Zhu Zhuqing just being more upfront about it. If he still smiled and accepted the alliance now, he'd have no self-respect left. He'd already been slapped once. Was he supposed to turn the other cheek? The bottom line was that the second prince could bully him because Dai Yao wasn't strong enough to be a threat. "The second prince is really something," Dai Yao said, his voice trembling with rage. "Ah, did I touch a nerve? Are you gonna cry?" "I'm so scared," Zhu Zhuqing said, snuggling against Dai Yaming, dripping with sarcasm. Zhu Zhuqing tugged at Dai Yao's sleeve, urging him to leave. The second prince and his crew were all-powerful soul masters. They didn't stand a chance. The second prince sighed inwardly. He'd never taken Dai Yao seriously in the first place. He just wanted to use him as bait to draw Davis's attention. He hadn't expected Zhu Zhuqing to mess it all up. Zhu Zhuqing had been bullied by Zhu Zhuqing her entire life, so she took it out on Zhu Zhuqing whenever she could. Insults and kicks were just part of everyday life. He'd planned everything, telling Zhu Zhuqing to keep her cool during negotiations. But the moment she saw Zhu Zhuqing, she couldn't help but show her true colors, ruining the alliance. Clearly, Dai Yao wasn't going to team up with him now. Faced with a useless opponent like Dai Yao and his fiancée, the choice was obvious for Dai Yaming. Do what you want with them, Dai Yaming told Zhu Zhuqing. He wasn't going to get his hands dirty. He wasn't about to attack an 11th level soul master who didn't even have a first soul ring. It would be embarrassing if word got out. Zhu Zhuqing practically vibrated with excitement as her soul power surged. Her martial soul manifested, transforming her into a sleek, black cat, her black outfit accentuating her curves. Her 2 yellow soul rings pulsed with an alluring light. Dai Yao stared at the rings, his own soul power struggling under the pressure. He knew he was outmatched. But Zhu Zhuqing was behind him, and his heart sank. This was the second prince's turf. They had no way out. He spat out, "I hope you don't regret this." Regret? Who do you think you are? Zhu Zhuqing scoffed. To her, Dai Yao and Zhu Zhuqing were just toys to vent her frustrations. At Star Luo Royal Academy, as the second prince's fiancée, she was constantly held down by the first prince's faction. She couldn't express it to anyone. But now that Zhu Zhuqing was here, she could finally release her pent-up anger. Dai Yaming knew how trapped his fiancée felt. And since he couldn't form an alliance with Dai Yao, he might as well let her have some fun. Looking at her 2 toys, Zhu Zhuqing grinned, extending her claw-like hands. Her first soul ring shimmered. First soul skill, Netherworld Thrust, that she closed the distance in a heartbeat, a black blur appearing in front of Dai Yao. A pair of razor-sharp claws, glowing with dark energy, lunged for him. Even outmatched, Dai Yao had to fight. Baji collapse, that the expected impact never came. Instead, a cloud of dust swirled, obscuring the scene. Dai Yao felt someone grab his hand. Sensing something was off, Dai Yaming narrowed his eyes. Chapter 25 Uncle 3. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 25, Third Uncle. The smoke cleared, revealing a figure standing between them. He had Dai Yao's fist trapped in one hand and was blocking Zhu Zhuqing's claws with the other. Zhu Zhuqing quickly retracted her hands and stepped back. Uncle 3. Dai Yao exclaimed, surprised. It was Dai Yao's third uncle, Dai Hengyu, the vice president of Xingluo Royal Academy. He'd heard that Dai Yao had been taken by the second prince's men and had rushed over. Luckily, he wasn't too late. I'm taking Dai Yao. Your Highness, any objections? Dai Hengyu asked, a smile playing on his lips as he released Dai Yao's fist and turned to face the second prince. Although he wanted to help Dai Yao, he knew this was a fight between 2 princes, allowed under the rules for throne succession. If he broke the rules, even as a prince, he'd face punishment. I believe wantonly trampling on the rules of succession is inappropriate. Dai Hengyu had no intention of letting Dai Yao go. It's Dai Yao's first day. He has a lot to take care of. Surely it's not asking too much for a relative to lend a hand, right? Dai Hengyu said, still smiling, his tone even. Dai Hengyu had used the succession rules against him, so he countered with his status as a relative. Now, Dai Hengyu couldn't find a valid reason to make him leave. Get out of here, Dai Hengyu said, waving his hand. He knew Dai Hengyu was determined to protect Dai Yao, and he couldn't touch him. Zhu Zhuqing leaned in and whispered, Yiming, are we just going to let them go? Zhu Qing and I haven't seen each other in ages. We were just getting started. Don't worry. Dai Hengyu can't stick to Dai Yao like glue. We'll get another shot. Dai Yao breathed a sigh of relief at Dai Hengyu's arrival. Otherwise, he and Zhu Zhuqing might not have made it out of the courtyard safely. Now that he'd calmed down, Dai Yao understood how important it was to be strong enough. Because he wasn't, he'd been nearly humiliated by the first prince at the academy gates and was now being bullied by the second prince and his cronies. He clenched his fists, glaring at Dai Yaming and Zhu Zhuqing. Just remember, I hope you don't regret this. Zhu Zhuqing just smiled, not taking Dai Yao's words seriously. But Dai Yaming narrowed his eyes, making a mental note of Dai Yao's threat. He's almost my equal. He's not a match for me now, but I can't give him the chance to get stronger. Dai Yaming was typically tolerant. Having been bullied by Davis for years, he understood the mentality of the victim. The day he could beat Davis, he'd make him pay double for all the pain he'd caused. Dai Yao must be thinking the same way. We can't let him train undisturbed. Dai Yaming was resolved. On the way back, Dai Hengyu walked ahead, with Dai Yao and Zhu Zhuqing following behind. Dai Yao walked up to Dai Hengyu, looking up at him. Thanks, third uncle. Without your help, I probably wouldn't have made it out of Dai Yaming's place today. Hey, it's my fault. Dai Hengyu looked sad and blamed himself. Dai Yao's mother had entrusted Dai Yao to him, but he had failed to protect him in the cold palace. And now, almost something happened again at the Royal Academy. He could understand not being able to protect Dai Yao when he was in the cold palace, the Queen's territory, which was beyond his reach. But the Royal Academy was his territory. Yao, even as the Vice President of the Royal Academy, I don't call all the shots. The first and second princes both have powerful backing, which gives me too much to worry about. Besides, the first and second princes targeting you is permitted by the rules of succession. I was afraid you'd get a big head after defeating Dai Mubai. Today, you should see the gap between you and them. When you're weak, you need to be patient. Don't put yourself in danger over pointless arguments. If they mess with you, avoid them. What you need to do now is focus on training and get stronger. Dai Hengyu tousled Dai Yao's hair, explaining his situation and what he needed to do. Dai Yao was touched by his third uncle's sincere words. Thank you, third uncle. I'll remember that. Alright, enough of that. Go comfort your girl. Dai Hengyu's tone turned playful, raising his eyebrows and glancing at Zhu Zhuqing, teasing Dai Yao. Dai Yao blushed, wanting to retort. But when he saw Zhu Zhuqing's silhouette in the setting sun, he felt a surge of courage. She's not my girlfriend. She's my fiancée. He said confidently. Hearing this, Zhu Zhuqing, who had been uneasy after the earlier events, flashed a smile. But it was gone in an instant. She lowered her head, hiding her expression. But her face was flushed, whether from the setting sun or embarrassment, it was hard to tell. Dai Hengyu stared blankly for a moment, then burst out laughing. The sound startled countless birds in the forest. That's my boy. Now you're talking like a Dai. As the fourth prince of Xingluo, and with Dai Hengyu's help, the admission formalities were quickly completed without a hitch. His height and weight were measured, and he received his new school uniforms. Dai Hengyu placed a purple gold card in Dai Yao's hand. This is a pass for the school cafeteria. You can order food whenever you're hungry, and it's free. I have someone who handles my meals every day. I've never used this card, so I can give it to you. Thanks, uncle. One last thing, you need to pick your mimetic training environment. It'll help your training, so choose carefully, Dai Hengyu warned. Then, he left. After all, he was the vice president and had responsibilities that kept him busy. After Dai Hengyu left, he had a student show Dai Yao the mimetic environments. Does the Fourth Highness have a mimetic environment in mind? The student was around 14 or 15, much taller than Dai Yao. He leaned over, lowering his head, and spoke kindly. In the original story, the master merged Shrek Academy into Tiando Royal Academy, not only to be eligible for the Continental Advanced Soul Master Academy Elite Tournament, but also for Tiando Royal Academy's advanced facilities. One of the most important was the mimetic training environment. Having known he would study at Xingluo Royal Academy, Dai Yao had carefully considered what kind of mimetic environment he needed. And today's two encounters only solidified his thoughts, so he asked the student, just one chapter today. There was a party at the company yesterday and I didn't have time to write. Sorry, I just finished writing a chapter. Chapter 26 4 Big Things You Can't Mess With. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 26, The Untouchables. Any spots in the training sims with waterfalls? Dai Yao asked. The student seemed taken aback. Why a waterfall? He figured princes only visited waterfalls for the scenery. Does the fourth prince want to check out a waterfall? Typical noble, he thought, but said, reporting to the fourth prince, all the waterfall locations are currently taken by nobles. There is only one owned by a commoner. Dai Yao didn't just want a waterfall because it was a classic training spot in novels. He'd considered his weaknesses and concluded it was the best place for him to improve. In his duels with stronger soul masters, he felt completely overwhelmed by their superior soul power. A constant waterfall could simulate that pressure. By adapting to the never-ending cascade, he could perform better against advanced soul masters. Plus, his sacred white tiger spirit was a forest king, and waterfalls were natural forest water sources, ideal for his personal training. The waterfall would help him adapt to constant pressure and enhance his soul power. Resisting the never-ending water would naturally force his soul power to grow with each exhaustion and recovery cycle. Dai Yao sighed when he heard about the nobles. At Star Luo, most of the nobles were aligned with the eldest and second princes. Despite his obvious talent, the age gap meant no one was willing to back him. If they knew he wanted a waterfall training sim, they'd likely block him and create obstacles. What to do? These nobles won't give me the training environment. My only hope is this commoner. It's not ideal to take someone else's training spot, but without it, I'm dead in the water. I have to get it, no matter what. He turned to the student. Is it possible to buy this training sim directly? Buying it would be the easiest solution. That might be tough. A lot of nobles have tried to buy it, but the owner always refuses. The student explained. At Star Luo Academy, training sims were assigned to students and remained theirs until graduation. Of course, if someone wanted to sell, it was their choice, even if it slowed their training. Dai Yao wanted to buy it, but the owner was stubborn. Nobles offered insane prices, but she always refused. Some were furious enough to consider dirty tactics. Your Highness, it's a real mess. Lots of nobles want it, but she won't sell, so it's a standstill. The student said. Dai Yao didn't waver. This was his only viable option. Don't try to dissuade me. Just take me there. I'll talk to the owner and see if we can work something out. Seeing Dai Yao's determination, the student inwardly rolled his eyes but kept his smile. He flattered Dai Yao and led the way. Dai Yao knew what the student thought. After 6 years in the cold palace, he was used to subtle contempt. It didn't bother him. He stayed silent and followed with Zhu Zhuqing. Night fell, and a waning moon appeared. They walked along the snowy path through the forest. Dai Yao asked about the academy. The student, despite his low opinion of Dai Yao, answered carefully. He worked for Dai Hengyu, and a single word from Dai Yao could change his future. Here at the Royal Academy, there are 4 people you don't want to cross. The first 2 are obviously the princes, Davis and Dai Yaming. Most of the nobles are supporting them. Then there's third Prince Dai Mubai, who's become a joke. He used to train hard, and some nobles even backed him as a gamble. But then he got engaged and went back to the palace. When he came back, he just gave up. The nobles who supported him were furious. The student exaggerated the nobles' outrage as if he'd seen it firsthand, so the duel in the palace hadn't been reported. Most of the academy didn't know about it. Interesting, Dai Yao thought. The student continued. Eldest Prince Davis just reached the Soul Master realm. And while the second prince is suppressed by his brother, he's holding his own because he has a soul bone. A soul bone? Dai Yao exclaimed, and a flash of surprise crossed Zhu Zhuqing's face. Yeah, they say the second prince has a 1,000-year-old soul bone. With his level 25 soul power, he can compete with level 29 great soul masters. It's all thanks to that soul bone. The student was showing off his insider knowledge. Dai Yao was shocked. Soul bones were the ultimate treasure for soul masters. In the original story, the Continental Advanced Soul Master Academy Elite Competition awarded 3 soul bones as the final prize. They were incredibly rare. Later on, the Shrek 7 monsters would become loaded with soul bones, but to most soul masters, they were unattainable dreams. Dai Yaming having a soul bone was bad news for Dai Yao. He'd have to face Dai Yaming directly in the throne competition. The stronger Dai Yamming was, the worse it was for him. This is not good. Dai Yao thought grimly. They walked and talked, and before they could finish discussing the untouchables, they arrived. "We're here, Your Highness," the student announced. Chapter 27 Heavenly Chasm. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 27 Heavenly Moat. Before you are two pools, separate and distinct, one large, one small. Beside the pool stretches an endless, dense forest. Steam rises from the smaller pool, a natural hot spring. A simple thatched hut sits nearby. Above the larger pool, a waterfall crashes down with a thunderous roar, its cascading water having smoothed a massive boulder where it plunges into the pool. Perfect, Dai Yao thought, eyeing the boulder as an ideal training spot. He gestured toward the hut and asked, "Does someone live there?" "Yes, Your Highness, fourth prince. The owner is Feng Wudong. She's got a quirky personality, so tread carefully," the student warned. Following the path along the shore, the three approached the hut. It was a basic structure of wood and thatch, but the ground around it was strangely scorched red and black. Suppressing his curiosity, Dai Yao knocked. "Who is it?" A clear, youthful voice called out from inside. Full of energy, the door swung open to reveal a striking girl. Her fiery red hair flowed down her back, reaching her waist. She was slightly taller than Dai Yao, her figure already blossoming with potential. She was definitely going to turn heads when she grew up. Still, not quite Zhu Zhuqing, Dai Yao thought. "It's me, Zhang Xiaofan. I'm here on behalf of someone who wants to purchase this mimicry training environment," the student said to Feng Wudong. His tone was familiar, like that of an old friend. "No way. Selling out to those nobles? Not a chance. Unlike you, I'm not selling myself to them. Aren't you ashamed, serving them every single day?" Feng Wudong snapped, showing Zhang Xiaofan no respect. Zhang Xiaofan looked helpless, as if he'd anticipated this. Stepping aside to reveal Dai Yao, he announced with pride, his voice a little louder than usual, "This isn't just any noble. This is the fourth prince of the Star Luo Empire." "The fourth prince?" Feng Wudong eyed Dai Yao skeptically, then glared at Zhang Xiaofan. "Who do you think you're fooling? There are only 3 princes. Where'd this fourth one come from? You'll do anything to get your way, won't you?" "I'm serious. He really is the fourth prince." Zhang Xiaofan insisted. Dai Yao pushed past Zhang Xiaofan, faced Feng Wudong, and said, "Hello, I'm Dai Yao, recently named the fourth prince of the Star Luo Empire. Maybe you've been busy training and haven't heard." Feng Wudong remained suspicious but glanced at Zhang Xiaofan, who nodded to confirm Dai Yao's identity. Straightening her posture, she conceded that Dai Yao was indeed the fourth prince, but then declared, "Even if you are the fourth prince, I still won't sell this place." She moved to slam the door. Dai Yao quickly blocked it. "At least hear my offer before you refuse," he said. Feng Wudong didn't hesitate. She shoved Dai Yao's hand away and slammed the door shut. A cold voice echoed from inside. "I don't care what you offer, the answer is no. To you nobles, this training ground is just a novelty, but for me, it's my only chance to change my fate. I will never sell this place, no matter what. Leave." Feng Wudong's rejection was absolute. The door seemed to symbolize the divide between nobles and commoners. Dai Yao felt a pang of frustration. This training ground was Feng Wudong's path to a better life, but it could be his as well. Her unwavering refusal presented a major obstacle. There was always a solution. Remembering the familiarity between Zhang Xiaofan and Feng Wudong, Dai Yao figured Zhang Xiaofan must know something. He turned to Zhang Xiaofan, his voice hard. "Why won't she sell? You know the reason. Tell me." Zhang Xiaofan found a clear patch, brushed off the snow, and motioned for Dai Yao to sit. He sighed, looking uncharacteristically somber. It was the first time Dai Yao had seen him drop the servile act. After a moment's hesitation, Zhang Xiaofan said, "It's a long story. There are deeper reasons behind Wudong's decision." He drew a long, deep line in the dirt with a stick, then pointed to one side. "At the academy, there are 4 groups you don't mess with. The first two are the princes. They represent the nobility. Powerful martial souls and natural talent make them natural soul masters, born to lead. Then he pointed the stick to the other side. This side is the commoner force. Any commoner who makes it to the Royal Academy has talent, but it's not enough when compared to the martial souls passed down by nobles. The line in the dirt symbolized the chasm separating the commoners from the nobles. But there's one commoner whose martial soul is better than most nobles. It's one of the top beast martial souls. He's also upright and outspoken. Any commoner who's bullied by a noble can count on him for justice. So, naturally, he became the spiritual leader of many commoner soul masters. Under his leadership, they formed the third force. That's why he's known as the third one you don't mess with. The martial souls of commoners who make it to Xingluo Royal Academy must be mutated. Mutated martial souls usually have side effects. That's true for me, and it's also true for Feng Wudong. Feng Wudong is constantly tortured by a fire within her. Staying in the hot spring is the only thing that eases the pain. This training ground is her lifeline. Dai Yao and Zhu Zhuqing were silent. He knew about the class divisions in Douluo continent, but hearing this firsthand was still a shock. In the original story, Shrek was surprised that only Fatty and Oscar were real civilians. They can become soul masters because of the mutation of their martial souls. Ma Hongjun is a phoenix out of a straw chicken, and he needs a woman to vent his evil fire. If you bring me here to buy her training ground, aren't you killing her? Dai Yao was curious. Zhang Xiaofan's expression was complicated, and tears streamed down his face. He choked back a sob and said, I don't want to, but I have no choice. I need to survive. I need money for medicine, or the side effects of my martial soul will kill me. To survive, I sold myself to the nobles. I live a pathetic life, doing despicable things. My former friends despise me now. Dai Yao was silent, patting Zhang Xiaofan's back. Under the night sky, only faint sobs could be heard. Chapter 28 Showdown. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 28, Showdown. This is complicated. This training ground isn't just a squabble between commoners and nobles, it's tied to Feng Wudong's very life. Taking this land is like taking her life, but Dai Yao wasn't about to fall on his sword for someone else. If he didn't get this training environment, his training would suffer, and that would jeopardize his chances in the succession battle. When it came down to a choice between him and her, Dai Yao was picking himself, no question. Another knock, the door swung open, revealing Feng Wudong. Seeing Dai Yao, she said, annoyed, what is it now? I told you, it's not for sale. As the door started to close, Dai Yao cut her off with a threat, I'm taking this place. Other nobles can't touch you at Xingluo Royal Academy, but as the Empire's fourth prince, the Academy answers to my family. I could get you fired for even a minor infraction. And if you still don't agree, I'll go after your family. You wouldn't want anything bad happening to them, would you? Feng Wudong was furious, her eyes bloodshot and brimming with tears. She stammered, speechless. She was powerless against that kind of leverage. Losing her chance to study at the academy would be even worse than losing the training ground, so Dai Yao laid it on thick. His second threat scared her even more. He wasn't attacking her directly, he was threatening her family. Torn between herself and her family, she didn't know what to do. If she gave up the training ground, she might as well be dead. If she didn't, her family could be. Choosing herself meant a lifetime of guilt and regret. But she wasn't ready to sacrifice herself for her family, either. She gave a sad smile, looked at young Dai Yao, and thought to herself that he was a true noble, always so ruthless. But then, thinking about Dai Yao's age, an idea sparked in her mind. Dai Yao was shorter than her, a few years younger. He was only 9. That meant he'd just awakened his martial soul. Even with incredible talent, he probably only had one soul ring, that was it. She had a plan, she said to Dai Yao, we're both soul masters, so let's settle this the soul master way. If you can beat me, I'll hand over the training environment, deal? Dai Yao perked up at the mention of a fight. Since becoming a soul master, He hadn't battled anyone except Dai Mubai, now someone was handing him a challenge on a silver platter, and he was all over it. Besides, he wanted to gauge his own strength. Dai Mubai was a top-tier soul master, but his victory had a lot to do with luck. Feng Wudong, a commoner, was a more average opponent. Since she proposed settling it with a soul master duel, he'd look like a bully if he refused. Even though Zhu Zhuqing hadn't said anything, Dai Yao sensed her disapproval when he was threatening Feng Wudong. "What's the matter, scared?" Feng Wudong taunted him, raising her voice. Dai Yao smiled smoothly and said, "Fine by me." Zhang Xiaofan came to Dai Yao's side and whispered, worried, "Your Highness, Feng Wudong is a level 13 soul master. You just got your first soul ring. I'm afraid you're outmatched. You can still back out." Zhang Xiaofan understood the power gap between soul masters, and he worried Dai Yao would blame him if he lost. "Don't sweat it. If I lose, it just means I need to train harder. It's not your fault." Dai Yao reassured Zhang Xiaofan. The two came to the edge of the pool, a wide-open space perfect for a duel. Entering battle mode, Feng Wudong lost her downtrodden look. Her fiery red hair fluttered, and she was confident and bold. "Come on. Let's see the white tiger martial soul of the Xingluo royal family." Fighting strong opponents was a soul master's dream. She'd seen the white tiger martial spirit in academy duels, but the princes were of too high a standing and too high a soul power level for her to ever spar with them. This fight with Dai Yao was a chance for her to grow. "Martial soul, activate." As soon as she finished speaking, orange flames erupted from Feng Wudong's body. Her long hair blazed, and she rose into the sky. Her hands transformed into wings covered in red feathers. A soft glow lit up her pretty face. She hovered in the air, a pale yellow soul ring swirling around her, and announced proudly. "Feng Wudong, martial soul blazing bird, level 13 battle soul master. I await your instruction." Like Ma Hongjun, her family had a turkey martial soul passed down for generations. Her mutated martial soul wasn't as powerful as Ma Hongjuan's, but it was still above average. Zhu Zhuqing remembered Dai Yao defeating Dai Mubai, who had level 17 soul power. She wasn't worried about him handling a commoner with an ordinary martial soul. She hadn't been there when Dai Yao beat Dai Mubai, so she was looking forward to this duel. Facing Feng Wudong, whose soul power outstripped his own, Dai Yao wasn't intimidated. "Martial soul, activate." A beam of white light shot from Dai Yao's body. A powerful gust of wind suddenly surged, and Feng Wudong and Zhang Xiaofan felt an invisible pressure weighing them down. "So, this is the white tiger martial soul. The pressure is intense," Feng Wudong murmured. "No matter how strong the martial soul is, I have to win for the sake of that training ground." Zhang Xiaofan was even more affected. His martial soul was suppressed by Dai Yao, and he stumbled back, looking horrified. When the white light faded, Dai Yao stood revealed. "Dai Yao, martial soul white tiger, level 11 battle soul master. I await your instruction." He bowed slightly, returning Feng Wudong's greeting. He only used the first form of his martial soul, the standard white tiger. He didn't think he needed the sacred white tiger form to deal with Feng Wudong. Hearing Dai Yao's soul power level, Feng Wudong felt a surge of hope. The two-level gap was a huge advantage. If she played her cards right, she could definitely win, but the dark yellow soul ring surrounding Dai Yao made her vaguely uneasy. For a commoner like her, having a century-old soul ring was rare. Her first soul ring was just over 100 years old, but Dai Yao's looked close to the limit for a first soul ring. Typical noble, getting help to snag a soul ring close to its limit, Feng Wudong thought resentfully. Her own soul ring, barely over 100 years, had taken everything she had. Nobles like Dai Yao could get high-quality soul rings without breaking a sweat. It wasn't fair. She had no idea the kind of pain Dai Yao had endured to get his first soul ring. Chapter 29 1 Moves. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 29 1 Move. Feng Wudong tested her abilities in the air, over and over. Each attempt made her even more scared. She dove at Dai Yao repeatedly, but instead of hurting him, she almost got caught herself. Looking down, she saw Dai Yao in a flawless defensive stance. She started to panic. Dai Yao, knowing she had no advantage in the air, was only defending, conserving his soul power. Meanwhile, she was burning through hers just by hovering. If this kept up, she'd run out of juice before he did. Besides, she couldn't fight him on the ground. Going hand to hand with the white tiger spirit was just asking for trouble. Sensing her dwindling soul power, Foam Wudong's heart leaped. With a piercing cry, her yellow soul ring blazed, and the surrounding fire elements swirled into a fiery red vortex, converging in her mouth. First soul skill, blazing fire stream. Orange-red flames erupted from her mouth, forming a long, searing ray aimed directly at Dai Yao. The flames lit up the night sky, and Zhang Xiaofan was worried. He knew just how powerful Foam Wudong's first soul skill was. Even though she was only a 13th level soul master, its attack power was higher than most. Only a select few soul masters could match it. Zhu Zhuqing's eyes widened too, curious to see how Dai Yao would handle this head-on attack. Dai Yao, watching the incoming flames, didn't flinch. He'd realized during their initial exchanges that Foam Wudong's attacks were too weak to break through his defenses. While the flames looked intense, they posed no real threat. Explosive step. Dai Yao roared, pouring his soul power into his feet and stomping hard. A thunderous boom echoed, sending smoke and dust billowing up, completely obscuring him. The ground beneath his feet cracked like a spiderweb. Then, a figure shot out of the smoke, rocketing toward Foam Wudong like a cannonball. Explosive step. That's your first soul skill. But why isn't his soul ring glowing? Foam Wudong was confused, but when she saw Dai Yao charging her, she felt a surge of elation, not fear. What an idiot. Rushing me like that in front of my blazing fire stream? You're practically begging for it. These nobles, they don't know how to really fight. They've got nothing to lose. Contempt filled her heart. Why make such a dumb choice? So stupid. Zhang Xiaofan sighed at Dai Yao's apparent recklessness. No, he's trying to overpower Foam Wudong's first soul skill head-on. Zhu Zhuqing realized. Understanding Dai Yao's plan, she was even more shocked by his audacity. An orange streak of fire hurtled down from the sky, while a figure shot upward from the ground, colliding with the terrifying flames. The tiny figure seemed insignificant compared to the overwhelming line of fire, like an earthworm trying to shake a tree, a mantis trying to stop a chariot. As Dai Yao flew, his dark yellow soul ring blazed, and he spoke with cold precision. First soul skill. White tiger protective barrier. A white barrier materialized in front of Dai Yao, just before impact with the flame ray. Foam Wudong, who had unleashed the fire stream, was stunned. He's using his first soul skill now. What was that just now then? A self-created soul skill. After Dai Yao's attack, the two onlookers understood what that soul skill was that Dai Yao had just stomped on the ground and flew into the air. Frozen, they uttered in unison. Self-created soul skill. None of the people they knew had self-created soul skills. Only legendary figures were said to possess them, but now, that legend was standing right before them. Even if your first soul ring is close to its limit, your choice is still stupid. My blazing fire stream will burn you to a crisp. Foam Wudong was confident in the power of her skill. After all, even the third most untouchable person in the academy had admitted that her first soul skill was extremely powerful. But then, as the line of fire collided with Dai Yao, something happened that shook her to her core. The white barrier in front of Dai Yao, as impenetrable as a brick wall, split her blazing fire stream in two. From the ground, it looked like a bamboo stick split down the middle by a blade. The separated streams of fire shot off in different directions, their power significantly diminished. How is this possible? How could his first soul skill have such strong defensive capabilities? Cold sweat trickled down Foam Wudong's face. This was beyond her comprehension. How could a soul master with 2 levels less soul power be so powerful? The fiery attack she was so proud of had been shattered head-on. No, this can't be happening. She refused to believe what she was seeing. She poured more soul power into her attack, making the flames burn even brighter. The orange flame bathed Dai Yao's protective barrier in a brilliant white glow. His upward momentum didn't slow at all. Like a knife, he sliced through the line of fire, and in the blink of an eye, he was right in front of Foam Wudong. What kind of monster is this? Terrified, Feng Wudong didn't dare to stop her fire stream, but her struggle was doomed. A hand gripped her neck, a sharp pain shot through her, and the flames weakened in her mouth. A few wisps of flame flickered and died, her martial soul possession began to fade, and she lost the ability to fly. Pulled by gravity, Dai Yao dragged her down to the ground. Total destruction. Feng Wudong is helpless against the fourth prince. Zhang Xiaofan stared, dumbfounded. He couldn't believe Dai Yao had won so easily. Feng Wudong was a tough opponent among first-level soul masters. Her first soul skill was so powerful that many couldn't block it, and she could fly, making her hard to hit. That's why Feng Wudong dared to challenge Dai Yao, even knowing he was the white tiger spirit. Zhu Zhuqing was initially amazed by Dai Yao's power, but when she saw him grab Feng Wudong's neck, she seemed to remember something. A similar feeling resonated within her, and she unconsciously touched her own neck. Dai Yao looked at the pretty face close to his own, her painful expression full of anger and refusal. You lost. Dai Yao stated the obvious, tears streamed down Feng Wudong's face. I lost, she choked out. She had expected to lose, but not this completely. Some readers said that it was depressing to read, so I would try to write less. Chapter 2 Afternoon. Chapter 30 Proposal. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 30, The Proposal. Feng Wudong couldn't hold on any longer. The moment Dai Yao released her, she collapsed to the ground, her clothes were torn, revealing her skin. The fiery blast from her earlier attack had glanced off Dai Yao, scorching and shredding her garments. She looked defeated, pressing her hands to the earth. She pushed herself up slowly, gazing at Dai Yao with desperation. You win, she said, her voice rough. From now on, this training ground is yours. Seeing Feng Wudong so broken, Dai Yao felt a pang of unease. Her life was already a struggle, fighting against the side effects of her mutated spirit and the weight of her family's destiny. He remembered his past life, the endless grind for a meager paycheck. He and Feng Wudong weren't so different. Compassion welled up within him. He pulled out 100 gold coins. Here, he said, consider this payment for the land. It's about market price. From here on out, this place is mine. Feng Wudong accepted the coins with a bitter smile. She hated her own weakness, her inability to protect what was hers. Now that she'd lost the training ground, the fire within her would only intensify, possibly consuming her in a matter of years. Her only chance was to find a hot spring to suppress the flames, but the nobles had a stranglehold on those resources. If she wanted to survive, she'd have to sell herself to them. I'd rather burn from the inside out. She vowed silently. I'll never give in to those leeches. Feng Wudong had her pride. Only a handful of commoner spirit masters who sold themselves to the nobility managed to retain any dignity. Unless they possessed exceptional talent, they were destined to become glorified slaves. She'd rather die than lose herself like that. Dai Yao spoke again. This hot spring is important to you, but it's useless to me. If you want, you can stay and continue training here. His unexpected kindness was like a lifeline. A flicker of hope ignited within Feng Wudong's heart. Why would he help me? What does he want? She wondered. Is it just about beauty? That she knew all too well that nothing was free. Dai Yao must have an angle, letting her train here for nothing. But what did she have to offer besides her looks? Then she glanced at Zhu Zhuqing. A wave of confusion washed over her. She couldn't even compare to Zhu Zhuqing's beauty, so what was his game? As long as you don't make me do anything I don't want to do, I'll stay, she said cautiously. Dai Yao dismissed her concerns. Whether you stay or not is your call. I'm not the one dealing with fiery side effects. He felt sympathy for her and offered a choice, but he wasn't about to beg. Feng Wudong felt a sense of relief wash over her. Dai Yao turned and surveyed the area. The forest was cloaked in shadows. The waterfall plunged into the pool below, creating a thunderous roar. Now that this place was his imagination started to run wild as he thought about the future. It was like buying a new house, staring at the empty rooms and dreaming of how to decorate. Dai Yao began envisioning the possibilities for the place he'd acquired. It was just an empty forest. He approached the still-stunned Zhang Xiaofan and instructed, Send some workers tomorrow to build a few basic houses, somewhere livable. I'll cover the wages. After Zhang Xiaofan left, only the three of them remained. Feng Wudong gathered the gold coins and walked tentatively toward Dai Yao and Zhu Zhuqing. You don't have anywhere to stay yet, she offered. Why not crash at my shack for a few days? You can move once your houses are built. Thank you, Dai Yao replied. Besides, you're letting me train here for free, Feng Wudong said with a casual shrug. It's the least I can do. Just don't expect much. She had a fiery personality, but she kept it hidden around strangers. When they arrived at the shack, it was even more primitive than they imagined. It contained only a bed, a bamboo chair, and a thick layer of dry straw serving as a mattress. Dai Yao and Zhu Zhuqing exchanged surprised glances. It was hard to believe a spirit master lived like this. You've had it rough, Dai Yao said, shaking his head. Feng Wudong didn't let her poverty faze her. She gestured around the small space. I built this myself, believe it or not. The Royal Academy is crazy expensive. The Spirit Hall gives me 1 gold coin each month. I thought it was a lot at first, but it barely covers expenses at the Academy. But with 100 gold coins, things will be easier, she said with a genuine smile, turning to Dai Yao. Thank you, Your Highness, for letting me train here. Dai Yao waved it off. This place was yours to begin with. I needed to train here, so I used your parents as leverage. I hope you can forgive me. Feng Wudong stared at him, speechless. She never expected a nobleman, let alone a prince, to apologize to her. In her experience, nobles were either arrogant and overbearing or superficially polite while secretly being rotten to the core. Dai Yao's sincerity caught her off guard. It's okay, she stammered, avoiding eye contact. It's just that I have a prejudice against nobles. So, when I heard you were one, I wasn't exactly thrilled. Dai Yao chuckled, and Feng Wudong couldn't help but smile too. After their exchange, the tension eased, and the three of them felt more comfortable with each other. It's getting late, Wudong. You should get some rest, Dai Yao said, glancing at the sky. They were already on a first-name basis. None of them seemed to care about the difference in their social standing. Feng Wudong had suggested Dai Yao call her older sister, but for some reason, he wouldn't. She was left with no choice but to let Dai Yao call her Wudong. Dai Yao secretly cringed. Adding his past life, he was nearly 30 years old. He couldn't bring himself to call a teenager sister. Feng Wudong was surprised to see Dai Yao and Zhu Zhuqing begin meditating. She never thought that these nobles would train so hard, even harder than her. She had expected to sleep, but they had begun cultivating instead. They were truly diligent.